husband refused to give me $20 to feed our starving child because he said I was a financial burden. Yet I just found a receipt for a $2,000 diamond necklace in his pocket while I was locked away in a mental facility thinking I was losing my mind. He was spending our life savings on his mistress and planning to have me committed forever just to steal my grandmother's inheritance. My name is Freya, and I am shaking as I tell you this because I do not know who else to trust. He convinced everyone, even his own mother, that I was the dangerous one. He filmed me crying to prove I was crazy, but he did not know I was filming him too. I discovered that my entire marriage was a scam designed to leave me homeless and penniless. So I did the unthinkable. I did not just leave him. I destroyed him. I took his money. I exposed his crimes to the federal government, and I put him in prison. Now I am sitting here with his money in my bank account, but my heart is shattered into a million pieces. Please tell me the truth. 2 hashes greater than did I turn into a monster to defeat one? What would you have done if you were me? My name is Freya Bennett. I am 26 years old, a former graphic designer who used to see the world in vibrant color palettes, but now only sees shades of gray. I am a mother to a 2-year-old boy named Leo, a wife to a man named Ethan, and until this morning, I was a patient in room 304 at the Willow Creek Mental Health Facility. We live in a quiet, manicured suburb of Connecticut, the kind of place where neighbors smile too wide and the homeowners association measures your grass with a ruler. To the outside world, I am the lucky stay-at-home mom who married a successful financial consultant. To the inside of my own head, I am a woman who just spent 30 days trying to convince a team of doctors that I am not crazy, that I just needed a break from the suffocating pressure of perfection. The discharge papers felt heavy in my purse as the Uber pulled up to my driveway. I took a deep breath, inhaling the crisp autumn air. It was supposed to be a fresh start. That is what the doctors told me. They said I needed to set boundaries. They said my breakdown, the screaming and the plate throwing that sent me away, was a reaction to stress, not a character defect. I wanted to believe them. I tipped the driver and stood on the sidewalk for a moment, looking at my house. It is a colonial-style build with white siding and black shutters. It looked peaceful, a lie made of wood and brick. I unlocked the front door, expecting the scent of lavender cleaning products, or maybe dinner cooking. Ethan knew I was coming home at 4 o'clock. Instead, a wall of stench hit me like a physical blow. It was a thick, sour mix of rotting garbage, stale dairy, and something sharp like ammonia. I dropped my bag. "Hello?" I called out. My voice sounded small, swallowed by the heaviness of the air. 2 hashes greater than. No answer. I walked into the living room, and my breath hitched. It looked like a fraternity house after a weekend bender. Takeout boxes were stacked in precarious towers on the coffee table. Pizza crusts, half-eaten burgers, and grease-stained napkins littered the floor. But that was not what made my stomach turn. It was the sight of my son's playpen. It was shoved into the corner, filled with dirty laundry. And then there was Ethan. He was sitting in the center of the chaos, wearing noise-canceling headphones, his eyes glued to the massive flat-screen television mounted on the wall. But he was not sitting on our old, comfortable beige sectional. He was sprawled out on a brand new, cognac-colored leather sofa that still had the factory sheen on it. "Ethan," I said, louder this time. He did not move. His fingers flew across a game controller, the rapid clicking the only sound in the room besides the hum of the refrigerator. I walked over and tapped him on the shoulder. He jumped slightly, then slid one ear cup off. He looked me up and down, his expression unreadable. There was no smile, no relief, no hug, just a cold, analytical stare, as if I were a door-to-door salesperson interrupting his dinner. "You are early," he said flatly. I stared at him. "I have been gone for 30 days. Ethan, I am not early. I am right on time. Where is Leo?" "My mother took him for the afternoon," he said, turning his eyes back to the screen. "She said she did not want him to see you until you were adjusted. She thinks you might be unstable." I felt a prick of heat behind my eyes, but I swallowed it down. "Control. Freya, remember the breathing exercises." I looked around the room again. The contrast was dizzying. The filth on the floor against the pristine luxury of the new furniture. "Ethan, what happened here?" I asked, gesturing to the piles of trash. "And what is this sofa?" "We talked about saving money. You said we were tight on funds." Ethan paused the game. He set the controller down with deliberate slowness and turned his whole body to face me. This was his business face. The face he used when he was explaining to a client why they lost money, but it was somehow good for them. "Let us get one thing clear. Freya," he said, his voice smooth and terrifyingly calm. "You have been gone for a month. You checked yourself into a luxury resort because you could not handle the basic duties of a wife and mother. You abandoned me. It was a hospital. Ethan," I whispered. "I was sick. I had postpartum depression that went untreated because you said therapy was for weak people." He held up a hand to silence me. "Semantics," he said. "You were eating 3 meals a day prepared by a chef, doing yoga, and talking about your feelings. Meanwhile, I was here, working 50 hours a week and dealing with the mess you left behind." He stood up. He was tall, handsome in a way that used to make my knees weak, but now just made me feel small. He walked over to the window and looked out at the street. "So, I made a decision," he continued. "Since you got a 30-day vacation, I deserve one too." I blinked, confused. "What does that mean?" "It means..." He turned back, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. "For the next 30 days, I am on strike. I am not lifting a finger. I am not cleaning. I am not cooking. I am not taking out the trash. And I am certainly not paying for anything unnecessary." He patted the armrest of the new leather sofa. "And this is my compensation. $3,000. Italian leather. I work hard. Freya, since I have to do everything around here, I deserve to be comfortable while I watch you try to fix this mess." I felt the blood drain from my face. $3,000? That was half our savings. "You spent $3,000 on a couch while the house looks like a landfill?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Ethan, this is insane. I just got home. I am recovering." "Recovering from what? Laziness?" He scoffed. "Look around. Freya, this is reality. You wanted to play the victim? Fine. Now you can play the maid. Welcome home." "Honey," he put his headphones back on, turned back to the television, and unpaused his game. I stood there in the middle of the rotting living room, clutching my purse. The smell was overwhelming now. I looked at the grease stains on the carpet, the mountain of trash, and the man I promised to love and cherish, ignoring my existence. My inner voice, usually so loud and chaotic, went suddenly quiet. It was replaced by a cold, hard realization: the doctors were wrong. My problem was not that I was crazy. My problem was that I was married to a man who wanted to break me. I looked at the receipt for the pizza box on the floor. It was dated 3 weeks ago. He had been living like this for weeks, just waiting for me to come back and clean it up. I took a step toward the kitchen to find a trash bag, but my foot crunched on something. I looked down. It was a photo frame, face down on the floor. I picked it up. It was a picture of us from our honeymoon in Hawaii. The glass was shattered, a spiderweb of cracks obscuring our smiling faces. I looked at Ethan's back one more time. He was humming to himself. He thought this was a game. He thought he was teaching me a lesson. I set the broken picture frame on the table. Game on. Ethan, I thought, but you have no idea who you are playing with anymore. I needed to get out of that house. The air inside was thick with the smell of neglect. And every time I looked at Ethan lounging on that $3,000 leather throne, my chest tightened until I could barely breathe. I told myself I was leaving for Leo. My son was coming home from his grandmother's house in a few hours, and the refrigerator was a barren wasteland containing only a jar of expired pickles and a 6-pack of craft beer. I grabbed the keys to our family sport utility vehicle and drove to the Whole Foods on the other side of town. The drive usually calmed me. I loved the tree-lined streets of our neighborhood, the way the autumn leaves painted the sidewalks in shades of russet and gold. But today, the scenery looked like a stage set for a play I no longer wanted to be in. Inside the supermarket, I tried to focus on the task at hand. I was a mother. I needed to provide. I filled the cart with Leo's favorites: organic dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets, fresh strawberries, whole milk, and ingredients for a pot roast. I wanted the house to smell like a home again, not a dumpster. I wanted to cook away the stench of the last 30 days. By the time I reached the checkout counter, my cart was full. I placed the divider on the conveyor belt and watched the cashier scan the items. Beep, beep, beep. The rhythm was soothing. That will be $187.50, the cashier said. She was a teenager with bright blue eyeliner, popping gum as she waited. I pulled out the joint debit card, the navy blue one that Ethan and I had shared since the day we got married. I slid it into the chip reader and waited. Authorized meant safety. Authorized meant I was still part of this life. A harsh buzz sounded from the machine. The screen flashed red. Declined. My stomach dropped to my shoes. I felt the heat creeping up my neck. There must be a mistake. I am sorry, I stammered, avoiding the eyes of the woman in line behind me, who was already sighing impatiently. Can I try again? The chip is a little worn out. I wiped the card on my jeans and inserted it again. I held my breath. Buzz. Declined. Not authorized. The cashier stopped chewing her gum. Do you have another form of payment? Ma'am, I froze. I did not have another form of payment. My personal savings had been drained years ago when Ethan convinced me to quit my design job to focus on the family. He said he would take care of everything. He said his money was our money. No, I whispered, my voice trembling. I do not. I had to walk away. I had to leave the cart full of food right there at the register. The woman behind me made a loud noise of annoyance and started tossing her items onto the belt before I had even turned around. The walk to the automatic doors felt like a march to the gallows. I could feel their eyes on my back. The crazy lady, the broke lady, the woman who could not even buy milk for her child. I sat in the car for 10 minutes, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Then I pulled out my phone and dialed Ethan. He answered on the first ring. What? He said. No, hello. No concern. The card was declined, I said, trying to keep the hysteria out of my voice. I am at the grocery store. I have no food for Leo. There is nothing in the fridge. Ethan, why was the card declined? I heard the sound of a video game pausing in the background. Oh, that, he said casually. I lowered the limit on the supplementary card to 0. 0? I asked. I could not comprehend what he was saying. Ethan, that is the family account. I need to buy groceries. You just got back from a very expensive vacation. Freya, he said, the facility cost me a fortune. Insurance only covered 80%. I need to recoup the losses. I cannot trust you with unrestricted access to funds right now. You are emotionally unstable. Who knows what you would buy? Maybe you would blow it all on useless trinkets to make yourself feel better. I looked at the empty passenger seat where the grocery bags should have been. I was buying chicken and milk. Ethan, for your son, come home, he said. I will handle it. I drove home with tears streaming down my face, blurring the pristine suburban streets. When I walked into the house, Ethan was still on the sofa. He did not look up. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a single $20 bill. He crumpled it into a ball and tossed it onto the coffee table, right next to a greasy pizza box. There, he said, go to the discount store down the street. Get what you need for tonight. I stared at the wrinkled bill. $20? Ethan, I cannot buy a week of groceries with $20. Then get creative, he snapped, finally looking at me. His eyes were cold, devoid of any warmth. And Freya, bring me the receipt. I want to see exactly where every penny goes. If there is change, I want it back. If you lose the receipt, do not expect any money tomorrow. I felt a scream building in my throat, the same scream that had sent me to the hospital 30 days ago. But I bit my tongue. I picked up the $20 bill. It felt dirty in my hand. Suddenly, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Linda, my mother-in-law. I answered, hoping for a shred of sympathy. Maybe she would understand. Maybe she would talk sense into him. Hello, Linda, Freya, dear. Her voice was sickly sweet. Ethan told me you made it home. I hope you are feeling. 小于静好 Ling, 2 hash is greater than better. I am trying. Linda, I said, but Ethan is. He is a saint. She cut me off. Her tone shifted instantly, becoming sharp and accusatory. Do you have any idea how hard he has worked while you were away playing the invalid? The poor boy is exhausted. He told me about the financial strain you put him under. He bought a $3,000 sofa. Linda, I cried out, unable to help myself. And he just gave me $20 to feed his grandson. Priorities. Freya, she tutted. A man needs to relax in his own home. He provides the roof over your head. The least you can do is stretch $1 and stop complaining. Most men would have left a woman who cracked up like you did. You should be on your knees, thanking him, not criticizing his furniture. She hung up before I could respond. I stood alone in the kitchen, the silence of the house pressing in on me. The $20 bill was still clutched in my hand. I looked through the open doorway into the living room. Ethan was back to his game, laughing into his headset at something a teammate said. He looked so comfortable, so powerful. He had $3,000 for leather, but $20 for his family. Something did not add up. It was not just about control. It was not just about punishment. Men who are struggling with money do not buy luxury furniture. Men who are worried about bills do not throw cash around like it is nothing, only to pinch pennies on milk. My eyes drifted to the pile of mail on the counter that I had not sorted yet. Buried under a stack of flyers was a bank statement for an account I did not recognize. It was addressed to Ethan, but the logo was for an offshore investment firm. I felt a chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the drafty house. You are lying. Ethan, I thought. I smoothed out the $20 bill and put it in my pocket. I would go to the store. I would buy the cheap food. I would play his game. But tonight, when he went to sleep, I was going to find out exactly how much a poor man really makes. The house was finally quiet. The digital clock on the microwave displayed 2 o'clock in the morning. My hands were raw and red. The skin around my fingernails cracked from 4 hours of scrubbing with harsh chemicals. I had spent the night on my hands and knees, erasing the physical evidence of Ethan's strike. I had scrubbed dried tomato sauce off the kitchen tiles, scraped unidentified sticky substances from the hardwood, and filled 6 heavy black garbage bags with the detritus of his bachelor lifestyle. Ethan was asleep upstairs. I could hear the faint, rhythmic rumble of his snoring through the ceiling. It was a sound that used to comfort me, a signal that my protector was near. Now, it just sounded like the growl of a guard dog resting between attacks. I should have been exhausted. My body was screaming for rest, my muscles twitching with fatigue, but my mind was wide awake, fueled by a cocktail of adrenaline and a dark, gnawing suspicion. The $20 bill was still in my pocket, a paper reminder of his cruelty, but the image of that $3,000 leather sofa burned brighter in my mind. I walked up the stairs, avoiding the 3rd step that always creaked. I needed to clean the master bedroom. It was the last room on my list. I told myself I was just cleaning, but deep down, I knew I was hunting. I pushed the door open. The room was stuffy, the air stagnant. Ethan was sprawled in the center of the king-sized bed, taking up more than his share of the space. The duvet kicked off his legs. I moved silently to the bathroom connected to our room. It was a mess. Wet towels were piled on the floor like dead bodies. The mirror was splattered with toothpaste. I began to tidy up, tossing the towels into the hamper and wiping down the granite countertops. As I reached for the small wicker wastebasket tucked under the sink, a glint of glass caught my eye. I pulled the bin out. Resting on top of a pile of used dental floss and empty toilet paper rolls was a wine bottle. I frowned. It was a dark green bottle with a gold label. I picked it up, weighing it in my hand. It was a Cabernet Sauvignon, a vintage from Napa Valley. I recognized the label immediately. It was not the cheap $10 wine we usually bought for movie nights. This was a bottle that cost upwards of $80. I stared at it. $80 for a bottle of wine? Ethan claimed we were so broke he had to cut the cable television and switch to generic brand toilet paper. He claimed he was drowning in medical bills from my stay at the facility. Yet here was an empty bottle of premium wine that he had consumed while I was eating cafeteria meatloaf and crying in group therapy. And there was something else. I do not drink red wine. It gives me migraines. Ethan knew this. He usually drank beer or whiskey. Who drank this with him? I leaned in closer to the bottle, sniffing the rim. It smelled of rich grapes and oak. But as I set the bottle down, another scent hit me. It was faint, lingering on the pile of towels I had just moved. I picked up the towel Ethan had used this morning. I buried my face in it, inhaling deeply. Beneath the smell of damp cotton and Ethan's body wash, there was something floral, sweet, sickly sweet, like vanilla and heavy musk. It was not my perfume. I only wore a light citrus scent, and I had not worn any in a month. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. A frantic bird trapped in a cage. Do not be crazy. Freya, I told myself. The doctor said paranoia is a symptom of your stress. Maybe he changed detergent. Maybe it is a new soap. But my hands were shaking as I turned back to the trash can. I dumped the contents onto the tiled floor. I needed to see everything. I sifted through the refuse. Q-tips, tissues, a razor blade wrapper, and then, at the very bottom, wadded up into a tight, hard ball, was a piece of white thermal paper. I sat down on the cold bathroom floor, my legs folding beneath me. I carefully uncrumpled the paper, smoothing it out on my knee. It was a receipt. The header read, Lumiere Jewelers. I knew the place. It was the high-end boutique in the city center, the kind of place where you had to be buzzed in by a security guard in a suit. My eyes scanned down to the date, October 14th. I froze. October 14th. That was 2 weeks ago. I was in the middle of my second week at the facility. That was the day I had called Ethan crying because I missed Leo so much. And he had told me he was too busy working late to talk. He was not working late. I looked at the item description. 18 karat gold, pendant, diamond accent. I looked at the price, $2,150. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. $2,150. He had spent over $2,000 on jewelry while telling me we could not afford to fix the leaky faucet in the kitchen. He had spent $2,000 while I was begging the hospital billing department for a payment plan. Who was it for? A tiny, desperate part of my brain tried to offer a lifeline. Maybe it is for you. Maybe it is a welcome home gift. Maybe he is planning to surprise you tomorrow. But then I remembered the leather sofa. I remembered the $20. I remembered the cold, dead look in his eyes when I walked in the door. Men who buy their wives $2,000 necklaces do not starve them. They do not humiliate them in grocery stores. This was not for me. I stood up, the receipt clutched in my fist like a weapon. The fatigue was gone. In its place was a cold, white-hot rage that started in my stomach and spread to my fingertips. I walked out of the bathroom and into the bedroom. I marched to the side of the bed and flipped on the bedside lamp. The sudden light flooded the room. Ethan groaned, shielding his eyes with his arm. What? Sao Yu Ting Haling. 2 hashes greater than what is going on? He mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. Turn off the light. Freya, I did not turn off the light. I threw the receipt onto his chest. What is this? Ethan, I asked. My voice was surprisingly steady, devoid of the hysteria he always accused me of. He blinked, confused, and picked up the paper. He squinted at it, and for a split second, I saw a flash of panic in his eyes. It was there and gone so fast I almost missed it. He sat up, rubbing his face, composing himself. You are going through the trash now? He asked, his voice dripping with disgust. Is that what they taught you in the loony bin? How to be a raccoon? Stop it, I said. October 14th, $2,150. You told me we were broke. You told me my medical bills were ruining us. You gave me $20 for food. Ethan, who is the necklace for? He sighed. A long, exaggerated sound of disappointment. He tossed the receipt onto the nightstand and looked at me with pity. It was for you, Freya. The lie was so smooth, so effortless. Me? I asked. Yes. You? He said, shaking his head. I bought it 2 weeks ago. I wanted to give you something special when you came home, something to mark a new beginning. I wanted to remind you that despite everything, despite how crazy you acted, I still valued you. I stared at him, I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe him. Then, where is it? I asked. Give it to me. He laughed. A short, cruel bark of a laugh. You think you deserve it now? After this, he gestured to the receipt and my angry stance. Freya, look at yourself. You come home. You wake me up in the middle of the night, screaming accusations, digging through my garbage like a paranoid lunatic. You have ruined the surprise. You have ruined the moment. He lay back down and pulled the covers up to his chin. I returned it. Freya, I took it back yesterday when I realized you had not changed at all. I knew you would come back and starting fights. And clearly, I was right. You returned it? I repeated. Then where is the refund receipt? Show me the credit back to the account. Stop, he shouted, slamming his hand against the mattress. This is exactly why you are on medication. You are obsessing. You are hallucinating conspiracies. There is no woman. There is no money. I bought a gift. I returned a gift. End of story. Now let me sleep before I call your doctor and tell him you are having a relapse. He rolled over, turning his back to me. I stood there, trembling. He was doing it again. He was twisting reality, making me doubt my own eyes. Was I crazy? Did I ruin it? Saudzinghal, Ling, due cancelletto e maggiore di no. I looked at the receipt on the nightstand. I looked at the empty space on the floor where the wine bottle had been. I walked over to the side of the bed where he was sleeping. I leaned down, close to the pillow. Saudzinghal, Ling. 2 hash is greater than I inhaled. There it was again, stronger this time. Vanilla and musk. It was on his pillowcase. I straightened up. I did not say another word. I turned off the lamp and walked out of the room. He could call me crazy. He could call me paranoid. But he could not scrub the scent of another woman off his skin. And he could not erase the numbers on that piece of paper. I went downstairs to the kitchen. I sat at the table in the dark, clutching the receipt that I had swiped back off the nightstand. He lied about returning it. I knew he lied, because the return policy at Lumiere Jewelers was strict. Store credit only after 7 days. And he said he returned it yesterday? It had been 14 days. He still had the necklace. Or rather, she still had the necklace. I was not crazy. I was waking up. The next 3 days blurred into a gray haze of exhaustion and suppressed rage. The house was clean again, but the atmosphere was toxic. I felt like I was walking on a tightrope over a pit of vipers, balancing a screaming toddler on one hip and a vacuum cleaner on the other, while Ethan stood on the sidelines waiting for me to fall. It started with a cough, a dry, hacking sound coming from Leo's crib in the middle of the night. By morning, his forehead was burning up. I checked his temperature with the digital thermometer. 102 degrees. His little face was flushed, his eyes glassy and wet. He clung to me, whimpering, his small hands gripping my shirt like he was drowning. I carried him downstairs, my own body aching from sleeping on the edge of the mattress to avoid touching Ethan. Ethan, I said, Leo has a fever. It is 102. I need to take him to the pediatrician or urgent care. Ethan did not look up from his breakfast. He was eating eggs and bacon that I had cooked, scrolling through his phone with a detached air of superiority. Give him some Tylenol, he mumbled. He will be fine. Kids get fevers. We are out of Tylenol, I said, trying to keep my voice level. The bottle in the cabinet expired 6 months ago, and with a fever this high, he needs to be seen. He might have an ear infection. Ethan finally looked up. He chewed his bacon slowly, staring at me as if I were speaking a foreign language. Urgent care is a $50 copay. Freya, plus whatever unnecessary antibiotics they prescribe. That could easily be $100. We are in savings mode. Remember? Savings mode? I snapped, shifting Leo's weight on my hip. You just bought a $3,000 sofa. My son is burning up. I am taking him to the doctor. Give me the card. No, he said simply. He stood up, wiped his mouth with a napkin, and dropped it on the plate for me to clean up. Use the expired medicine. It is just a date on a bottle. The chemistry does not change. Stop coddling him. You are making him weak. Just like you. He walked past me, grabbing his car keys. I am going to the gym, he announced. Do not call me unless the house is on fire. I stood in the kitchen, stunned, holding my sick child. I had to crush up the expired tablets and mix them with applesauce, praying they would still work. I spent the next 6 hours rocking Leo, singing lullabies until my throat was raw, while the image of Ethan lifting weights and sitting in the sauna played in my head. By late afternoon, Leo finally fell asleep, but I was a wreck. I had not showered in 2 days. There was dried applesauce in my hair and spit up on my shoulder. I smelled like sour milk and anxiety. Ethan came home around 4 o'clock, smelling of expensive cedar soap and fresh cologne. He looked energized, his muscles pumped, his skin glowing. He grabbed a beer from the fridge and flopped onto his leather sofa. I walked into the living room. My legs felt like lead. Ethan, I said, my voice hoarse. Leo is asleep. I need to take a shower. A real shower. Just 10 minutes. Can you please just sit here and listen for him? If he cries, just go in and pat his back. That is all. Ethan cracked open the beer. The sound hissed through the room. I told you, Freya, he said, keeping his eyes on the television screen. I am on strike. My shift does not start for another 26 days. I stared at him, my hands trembling. I am asking you to watch your own son for 10 minutes so I can wash the vomit off my body. I whispered, this is not a strike. This is cruelty. He shrugged. You wanted equality, right? You left me alone for a month. Now you are alone. Figure it out. Bring the baby monitor into the bathroom if you are so worried. I felt something snap inside me. It was not a loud break, but a quiet, structural failure. I turned around and walked back toward the stairs. I did not have the energy to fight. I ran the shower. The water lukewarm because I was trying to save on the gas bill. I kept the bathroom door open, straining my ears for any sound from Leo's room. I scrubbed my skin raw, trying to wash away the feeling of helplessness. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed from the nursery, followed by a piercing, terrified scream. Soy Jing Hao Ling. Dos numeral es mayor que Leo. I scrambled out of the shower, dripping wet, wrapping a towel around myself as I ran. I slipped on the hallway floor, banging my knee, but I scrambled up and burst into the nursery. Leo had climbed out of his crib. He was on the floor, his forehead rapidly swelling with a purple bruise. He was screaming, his face red, tears streaming down his cheeks. I scooped him up, checking his limbs, checking his head. He was okay, just scared and bruised. But the sound of his crying was like a drill boring into my skull. I marched out of the room, holding the screaming toddler, and went to the top of the stairs. Ethan, I screamed. He was still on the sofa. He had not moved. He had not even paused the television. Did you not hear him fall? I shrieked, my voice cracking. He climbed out of the crib. He could have broken his neck. Ethan stood up then. He walked to the bottom of the stairs, but he did not look concerned. He did not reach out for his son. Instead, he pulled out his phone. He held it up. The camera lens pointed directly at me. "Look at you," he said calmly. I was standing at the top of the stairs, wet hair plastered to my face, a towel barely covering me, holding a screaming child. My face twisted in pure, unadulterated rage. "Put the phone away and help me," I yelled, the volume of my voice startling even me. "You are hysterical." "Freya," Ethan said, panning the camera up and down. "Look at this. You are completely unhinged. You are endangering the child with your instability, screaming like a banshee. Stop filming me." I lunged forward, but stopped myself at the edge of the step. He tapped the screen. "Sent." "Sent?" I gasped. "Who did you send that to?" "The family group chat," he said, smiling. "My mother, your sister, my sister, just so everyone knows what I am dealing with." I captioned it. "She is having another episode. I am worried about Leo's safety." My phone, which was in my pocket, pinged. Then it pinged again and again. I pulled it out with shaking hands. Message from Linda. "Mother-in-law. Oh my God. Ethan, get Leo away from her. She looks dangerous." Message from Sarah. "Sister-in-law. Do we need to call the police? She looks manic." I looked down at Ethan. He was back on the sofa, typing a reply. I felt the walls of the house closing in on me. He was not just lazy. He was not just mean. He was rewriting the narrative of my life in real time. He was building a case. I looked at Leo, who had stopped crying and was now just hiccuping against my chest. I looked at the bruise forming on his head. I realized then that I was entirely alone. The man downstairs was not my husband. He was an architect, and he was designing my destruction. I retreated into the nursery and locked the door. I sat in the rocking chair, clutching my son, shivering in my damp towel. I did not reply to the messages. I did not scream anymore. I just sat there, rocking back and forth, listening to the silence of the house and the terrifying sound of Ethan laughing at the television downstairs. He wants me to be crazy. I thought, he wants me to break so he can take everything. I looked at the camera lens on my own phone. If he wanted a show, I would give him one, but not the one he was expecting. The dining room table was set with my best china, the plates edged in delicate gold leaf that belonged to my grandmother. The air was heavy with the scent of rosemary and roasted beef. A meal I had spent 4 hours preparing while Leo sat in his high chair, watching me with wide, fearful eyes. Ethan sat at the head of the table, looking like a king holding court. To his right sat his mother, Linda, wearing a string of pearls that looked too tight for her neck. To his left was Sarah, his younger sister, who was scrolling through her phone and chewing gum with her mouth open. I did not sit. I was too busy refilling their wine glasses. It was the expensive Cabernet Sauvignon again. Ethan had bought another bottle to replace the one I found, brazenly displaying it as if daring me to speak. "The meat is a little dry, Freya," Linda said, poking at the roast beef with her fork. She looked at me with a pitying smile. "But I suppose we cannot expect culinary perfection from someone who has been Saoyutsing Haling. Two hash is greater than a whey." I gripped the neck of the wine bottle until my knuckles turned white. "I am sorry, Linda," I said softly. "I am still getting back into the rhythm of things." "Sit down, Freya," Ethan commanded, not looking at me. "We need to talk." I took the empty chair at the far end of the table. opposed him. The distance between us felt like a canyon. I looked at the three of them. They formed a triangle of judgment. I was the accused. Ethan wiped his mouth with a linen napkin and placed it neatly on the table. He reached under his chair and pulled out a thick manila folder. He slid it across the polished wood surface toward me. The friction made a dry, rasping sound that echoed in the silent room. "What is this?" I asked, staring at the folder. "It is a solution," Ethan said. He clasped his hands together. "We are all very worried about you. Freya, the episode yesterday with Leo, Haling. 2# is greater than the screaming, the violence. It is clear that 30 days in the facility were not enough. You are still unwell." I looked at Linda. She nodded solemnly. "It breaks my heart to see you like this, dear," Linda said. "Unfit to be a mother." I felt the blood rushing in my ears. I am not unfit. I was exhausted because Ethan refused to help me. Ethan held up a hand. "Do not start with the paranoia again," he said. "We are here to help." Inside that folder is a legal agreement. It is a temporary power of attorney and a custody modification. I froze. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Custody modification?" I whispered. "It grants full legal and physical custody of Leo to me," Ethan explained calmly. "And it grants me full control over your finances and assets until a doctor of my choosing, deems you competent again." "My finances?" I laughed. A dry, hysterical sound. "What finances?" "Ethan, you control everything already. You give me $20 for groceries. I have nothing." "Oh, but you do," Sarah chimed in. Her voice was scratchy, like sandpaper. "Grandma Rose." The name hit me like a slap. My grandmother, Rose, had passed away 6 months ago. Her estate was substantial, accumulated over a lifetime of real estate investments. The probate period was ending next week. I was the sole beneficiary. The inheritance was nearly $500,000. Everything clicked into place. The timing of my breakdown, the sudden cruelty, the rush to declare me insane. "You want my inheritance," I said, my voice trembling. "This has nothing to do with Leo. This is about Grandma Rose's money." Ethan Sehil, looking at his mother as if to say, "See, she is delusional. This is about protecting our family's future from a woman who cannot control her emotions," Ethan said sharply. "That money needs to be managed by a professional. I am a financial consultant. Freya, it is logical. If you get that money in your current state, you will waste it, or worse, you will use it to run away and kidnap my son. I am not signing that," I said, pushing the folder back. Ethan smiled. It was a terrifying smile, devoid of any humor. "I thought you might say that." He pulled his phone out of his pocket and tapped the screen. He turned it around so I could see. It was the video from yesterday. Me, hair wet, screaming at the top of the stairs, looking wild and dangerous. But he had edited it. He had cut out the part where I asked for help. He had cut out the part about Leo falling. It was just 10 seconds of me shrieking like a banshee, followed by a close-up of the bruise on Leo's head. "I have spoken to a lawyer," Ethan said softly. "This video, combined with your recent hospitalization record, is enough to get an emergency court order. If we go to court, Freya, I will not just take the money. I will have you committed to the state psychiatric ward, the one with the bars on the windows, and you will never see Leo again." He leaned forward, his eyes boring into mine. "But if you sign this paper voluntarily, We can keep this within the family. You can stay in the house. You can see Leo under supervision. We will take care of the money. It is a win-win. I looked around the table. Linda was sipping her wine, looking bored. Sarah was checking her cuticles. They knew. They all knew. This was an ambush. I looked at Ethan. For the first time in 5 years, the fog of love and duty completely lifted. I did not see my husband. I did not see the father of my child. I saw a parasite, a bloated, greedy tick that had latched onto my life and was sucking me dry. He did not want to help me. He wanted to erase me and replace me with my own bank account. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. The fear was evaporating. The panic was receding. In its place, something cold and hard was forming. It felt like steel. If I fought him now, here, I would lose. I had no money, no lawyer, and he had the evidence to paint me as a monster. But if I signed Sayuting Haoling, 2 hashes greater than I would buy time, I needed to be smarter than him. I needed to be the snake in the grass, not the mouse in the field. I looked down at the table. I let my shoulders slump. I forced tears into my eyes. I made myself look small, broken, and defeated. I just, Sayuting Haoling, 2 hash is greater than I just want to be with Leo. I sobbed quietly, then signed the paper. Freya, Linda urged, be a good mother for once. I reached out and took the pen from Ethan's hand. My hand trembled, partly from nerves, but mostly from the sheer effort of holding back the urge to stab him with it. If I sign, I whispered, you promise I can stay? You promise I will not go back to the hospital? I promise, Ethan said. His voice was thick with triumph. He thought he had won. He thought he had broken the final bone in my spine. I opened the folder. I stared at the legal jargon that would strip me of my rights. I am going to destroy you, I thought, the words ringing clear and loud in my head as I pressed the pen to the paper. I am going to take everything you love, everything you own, and everything you think you are. I signed my name, Freya Bennett. Ethan snatched the folder away the second I finished. He checked the signature, then grinned at Sarah. See, he said, that was not so hard. He poured himself another glass of wine. Welcome back to the family, Freya. I wiped my eyes and stood up. May I be excused? I asked meekly. I have a headache. Go ahead, Ethan said dismissively. Do the dishes in the morning. I walked out of the dining room, listening to their glasses clink in celebration. They were toasting to their victory. They were toasting to the money they were about to steal. I walked up the stairs, past the nursery where my son slept. I went into the bathroom and locked the door. I looked at myself in the mirror. My face was pale, my eyes red, but I was smiling. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator who has just spotted its prey. The old Freya, the one who believed in fairy tales and second chances, died at that dinner table. The woman staring back at me was someone else entirely, and she was ready to go to war. For the next 5 days, I ceased to exist as a person. I became a ghost in my own home, a silent specter drifting between the kitchen and the nursery. I wore my oldest sweatpants. I kept my hair pulled back in a severe bun. I did not speak unless spoken to, and even then, I kept my voice barely above a whisper. I played the role Ethan had written for me perfectly. I was the broken woman, the medicated wife, the burden. Every morning, I woke up at 5 o'clock to iron his shirts. I made sure his coffee was brewed to the exact temperature he liked. When he came into the kitchen, smelling of sleep and entitlement, I placed his mug on a coaster and retreated to the sink to scrub dishes that were already clean. "Thank you, Freya," he would say, not looking up from his tablet. "Try to keep Leo quiet today. I have important calls." I would nod, keeping my eyes on the floor. "Yes, Ethan." Of course, this submission was a drug to him. I watched as his shoulders relaxed. I watched as the suspicion in his eyes faded, replaced by a smug satisfaction. He believed he had won. He believed the contract I signed was a leash that had choked the fight out of me. He thought the pills he saw me swallow every night were sedatives. He did not know I was spitting them into the potted fern in the hallway as soon as he turned his back. On the third day of my surrender, I needed money. Real money, not the $20 he threw at me for groceries. I needed capital to fund my war. I waited until Ethan left for work. I packed Leo into his stroller and walked 3 miles to the downtown area. My destination was a small, dusty pawn shop tucked between a liquor store and a bail bondsman office. It was a place where desperate people went to trade their memories for rent money. I walked up to the counter. The man behind the glass was heavy-set, with grease stains on his shirt and a jeweler's loop hanging around his neck. "Help you?" he grunted. I pulled the ring off my finger. My wedding ring. It was supposed to be a 1-carat diamond set in platinum. Ethan had given it to me on a beach in Maui, telling me it cost him 3 months of his salary. I had cherished it. I had polished it every week. It was the symbol of his promise to protect me. "I need to sell this," I said, my voice steady. "Cash." The man took the ring. He screwed the loop into his eye and held the ring up to the harsh fluorescent light. He turned it over. He scratched the stone with a tool. He let out a short, wheezing laugh. "I can give you $150. He said, "Saoyuting howling. 2 hash is greater than I frowned." "Sir, that is a platinum band with a 1-carat diamond." It was appraised at $6,000. The man dropped the ring onto the rubber mat on the counter. It made a hollow, plastic sound. "Lady, the band is 14-carat white gold, thin as paper. And the stone, that is cubic zirconia. High grade. Maybe, but it is glass. It is worth about $10. The gold is worth 1 to 140. The air left my lungs. "Glass?" I whispered. I picked up the ring. I looked at the sparkling stone that I had worn for 4 years. The stone I had stared at during the long, lonely nights of my pregnancy, reminding myself that I was loved. It was a fake. He had lied from the very beginning, even back then. When I thought we were happy, when I thought we were building a life, he had been cutting corners. He had looked me in the eye, proposed to me with a piece of glass, and let me believe I was precious to him. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. It was not a tear of sadness. It was a tear of pure, distilled mourning for the girl I used to be. That girl was stupid. That girl was blind. "I will take the 150, I said. I walked out of the shop with a wad of dirty bills in my pocket and a bare finger. I felt lighter. The lie was gone. I went straight to an electronics store. I did not buy groceries. I bought 3 tiny, motion-activated nanny cameras and 2 high-sensitivity voice recorders. I bought a memory card with the highest storage capacity available. I walked home with the weapons of my liberation hidden in the diaper bag. That night, the tragedy truly began. Ethan came home late, but he was not alone. I was in the kitchen, feeding Leo his dinner, when I heard the front door open. I heard Ethan's voice, booming and cheerful, a tone I had not heard directed at me in years. And then I heard a woman's laughter. It was a light, tinkling sound. artificial and grating. Freya, Ethan called out. We have a guest. My heart stopped. I wiped Leo's face and walked into the living room. Ethan was standing there, loosening his tie. Next to him stood a woman I recognized instantly. Mia. She was my former colleague at the design firm. The one who had accidentally deleted my project files 2 days before a deadline. The one Ethan had always claimed was annoying and unprofessional. She was wearing a dress that was too short for the weather, and her hand was resting familiarly on Ethan's arm. Hello, Freya, Mia said, smiling. Her eyes scanned my baggy sweatpants and my messy hair. You look, 小雨静好令, 2# is greater than comfortable. Mia is going to be helping me with some portfolio management, Ethan said quickly. He did not look at me. He looked at Mia with a hunger that made my stomach turn. We have a lot of work to do. She will be staying for dinner. I looked at the two of them. The audacity was breathtaking. He was bringing his mistress into our home, right in front of my face, under the guise of work. He was banking on my brokenness. He assumed I was too sedated to care, or too afraid to speak. I lowered my head. Welcome, Mia, I said softly. I will set another place at the table. Good, Ethan said, clapping his hands. And Freya, make sure the wine is breathing. The good stuff. I went back to the kitchen. I gripped the edge of the granite counter until my fingernails threatened to snap. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab the carving knife and slice the air until the tension broke. But I did not. Instead, I opened the wine. I put the roast in the oven. And then, while they were busy laughing in the living room, I slipped upstairs. I placed the first recorder under the bed in the master bedroom. I hid the second one behind the books on the shelf in Ethan's home office. I went back downstairs. I hid a camera inside a decorative vase on the mantelpiece, angling it perfectly toward the new leather sofa. I served them dinner like a maid. I poured their wine. I cut the bread. I watched as Mia touched Ethan's hand every time she laughed. I watched as Ethan looked at her with adoration, ignoring the fact that his wife was standing 3 feet away, refilling his water glass. They talked about people I did not know. They talked about trips they wanted to take. Freya, you can go upstairs now, Ethan said abruptly. Halfway through the meal, Mia and I need to discuss confidential client data. It is boring stuff. You would not understand. He waved his hand at me as if shooing away a fly. Of course, I said. I picked up Leo from his high chair. Good night, Mia. She waved her fingers at me. A diamond bracelet sparkling on her wrist. A real diamond. Sleep tight, hun. I carried my son upstairs. I put him in his crib and kissed his forehead. I did not go to sleep. I went into the guest room, which was directly above the living room. I lay on the floor, pressing my ear against the vent. I did not need the vent, though the house was old and sound traveled. I heard the clinking of glasses. I heard the low murmur of Ethan's voice. She is totally out of it, I heard him say. The doctor has her on heavy stabilizers. She signed the papers. Mia, it is done. The money will be released next week. Is it enough? Mia asked. 500,000. Ethan replied. Plus the equity in this house. Once I commit her and sell it, we are looking at nearly $1 million. That is enough for the condo in Miami and the boat. I heard the sound of the leather sofa creaking. I heard the wet, sloppy sound of a kiss. Poor Freya. Mia giggled. She really thinks you are just working hard. She thinks what I tell her to think. Ethan said. His voice was cold, devoid of any pity. She is a 0. Mia? She stopped being interesting the moment she got pregnant. Now she is just an obstacle. An obstacle I have almost cleared. I lay there on the dusty floorboards, tears streaming silently into my ears. This was the tragedy. It was not that he cheated. People cheat, marriages fail. The tragedy was that he looked at the mother of his child, the woman who had built a life with him, and saw nothing but a dollar sign and a nuisance. The tragedy was that he was willing to erase my sanity, my freedom, and my motherhood just to buy a boat. I listened to them for an hour. I listened to the sounds of their intimacy in the home I cleaned, on the furniture paid for with our savings. Every moan was a stab wound. Every laugh was a twist of the knife. But I did not move. I let the pain wash over me. I let it strip away the last remnants of my hope. Pain is a fuel. If you know how to burn it. By the time the house went quiet and I heard Ethan stumbling up the stairs with Mia giggling behind him, I was dry-eyed. I crept back to the master bedroom door after they had closed it. I stood there for a moment, listening to the lock click. They were in my bed. Good, I thought, because the recorder under the mattress was rolling. I went back to the nursery and curled up on the rug beside Leo's crib. I held his small hand through the bars. They think I am a zero, I whispered to the darkness. Tomorrow, they are going to learn that a zero is the most dangerous number of all, because when you multiply anything by zero, it disappears. I closed my eyes, listening to the rhythmic breathing of my son. The tragedy was over. The horror movie was about to begin. And this time, I was the director. 3 o'clock in the morning is a unique time. It is the hour when the world is stripped of its pretense. When the silence is so heavy it feels like a physical weight pressing against your eardrums. In the suburbs of Connecticut, at 3 in the morning, the only things awake are the street lights, the stray cats, and women like me who are plotting their survival. I was standing in the hallway, barefoot, listening. The house was a mausoleum of secrets. Upstairs, in the master bedroom that used to be my sanctuary, my husband was sleeping, but he was not alone. The faint, rhythmic breathing of 2 people drifted down the staircase. Ethan and Mia. They were asleep in the bed we had picked out together 3 years ago, likely tangled in the sheets I had washed just yesterday. A week ago, this knowledge would have shattered me. I would have been curled into a ball on the kitchen floor, sobbing until my throat bled. But tonight, I felt nothing but a cold, clinical precision. My heart was beating slowly, steadily, like a metronome counting down to an explosion. I was not the victim anymore. I was the investigator. I moved toward the door of Ethan's home office. The floorboards were treacherous, seasoned enemies that creaked if you stepped on the wrong spot. I knew every groan of this house. I stepped over the squeaky board near the linen closet and glided into the room. The office smelled of him. It was a mix of stale coffee, cedarwood cologne, and the metallic tang of electronics. This room had been forbidden territory for the last 2 years. Ethan always kept the door locked, claiming he handled sensitive client data that I was not cleared to see. He told me it was federal law. He told me I was too careless to be around such important documents. But tonight, the door was unlocked. Arrogance is a funny thing. It makes you feel invincible, but it also makes you sloppy. Ethan believed I was sedated. He believed I was a broken, compliant doll who was currently unconscious in the nursery. He did not think he needed to lock the door against a ghost. I closed the door softly behind me and sat in his leather executive chair. It was still warm. The computer tower hummed under the desk, a blue light pulsing like a heartbeat. I woke the monitor. The screen flared to life, casting a ghostly blue glow over my face. Enter password. I stared at the blinking cursor. This was the first gate. Ethan thought he was a genius, a mastermind of finance. But masterminds are often predictable. I tried his birthday. Incorrect. I tried the date of our wedding. Incorrect. I tried the name of his favorite football team. Incorrect. I paused. I closed my eyes and tried to think like him. What did Ethan love? Who did he value? He did not value me. He did not value Leo. He valued status. He valued money. And right now, he was obsessed with Mia. I typed in the date of the day he met Mia. I remembered it because he had come home that day talking about the new hot girl in marketing, long before I realized she was a threat. April 1st. 小于今号零 dos. Incorrect. I took a deep breath. My hands hovered over the keyboard. Think, Freya. What is the one thing he cannot stop thinking about? I remembered the conversation I had overheard earlier through the vent. He had bragged about the money. He had bragged about the boat he wanted to buy. I typed in the name of the boat model he had a picture of on his vision board. Sea Ray Sundancer. The screen went black for a second. Then the desktop icons appeared. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. Narcissists are always predictable. They use their desires as their keys. I did not have much time. I pulled a high-speed external hard drive from my pocket, bought with the money from my fake wedding ring, and plugged it into the universal serial bus port. I started clicking. I ignored the folders labeled family photos or house projects. I went straight to the folder labeled Consulting, Finances. It was a labyrinth of subfolders. I opened one named Tax, Returns, Current. I opened the portable document format file for the last fiscal year. I scanned the numbers. My eyes widened. According to this document, Ethan had declared a total annual income of $45,000. He claimed he was barely scraping by. He had claimed exemptions for a home office, a company car, and travel expenses that exceeded $20,000. $45,000? We lived in a house with a $5,000 a month mortgage. He drove a luxury sedan with a lease payment of $800. He wore suits that cost $2,000 each. I opened another folder labeled Client, Investments. This was where the horror truly lived. I saw transfers, massive wire transfers. August 15th, $50,000 transferred to Crypto Wallet X. September 1st, $25,000 transferred to Cayman Holdings, Limited Liability Company. October 10th, $12,000 transferred to BetMGM account. He was not just hiding money, he was gambling it. He was siphoning money from his clients' accounts, moving it through a shell company, and then dumping it into high-risk cryptocurrency markets and online sports betting sites. And he was losing. I opened a spreadsheet titled Loss Recovery Plan. It was a simple, terrifying document. It was a list of assets he could liquidate to cover the hole he had dug before his firm found out. Item 1. Sell jewelry. Item 2. Liquidate joint savings. Item 3. Freya's inheritance. Pending. Item 4. Home equity. Post-commitment. I stared at the screen, my hand covering my mouth to stifle a gasp. He had stolen from his clients. He was in debt for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I was his bailout, my grandmother's legacy. The money she had worked her whole life to leave me was the only thing standing between him and prison. And to get it, he had to get rid of me. I selected every folder. Select all. Copy. Paste to external drive. The progress bar appeared. Time remaining. 12 minutes. 12 minutes. It felt like 12 years. While the bar crawled across the screen, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the small voice recorder I had retrieved from the living room earlier. I needed to hear what they had said while I was cooking dinner. I needed the smoking gun that proved his intent to harm me, not just his financial crimes. I put in my earbuds and pressed play. The audio was crisp. I heard the clink of silverware. I heard Mia's annoying laugh. Audio. Ethan. The lawyer says the video is perfect. She looks completely manic. The judge will grant the emergency order within 24 hours of filing. Mia, are you sure she will not fight back? She used to be smart. Ethan used to be. I have spent 2 years breaking her down. Mia, she questions her own sanity every time she wakes up. I have gaslighted her so hard, she does not know if the sky is blue unless I tell her it is. She will sign whatever I put in front of her just to make me stop yelling. I flinched. Hearing him say it, admitting it so casually, was like a physical blow. He knew exactly what he was doing. It was not a marriage. It was a psychological experiment. Mia, and the inheritance? Ethan. It clears next Friday. Once the money is in the joint account, I transfer it to the offshore shell to cover the crypto losses. Then, we put Freya in the state facility, the one in the North County. It is understaffed and overfilled. They will keep her sedated. By the time she gets out, if she ever gets out, the money will be gone. The house will be sold, and we will be in Spain. Mia? God, you are bad. I love it. I paused the recording. I felt a cold sweat trickling down my spine. The state facility in the North County. I knew that place. It was a warehouse for the forgotten. People went in there and disappeared. He was planning to bury me alive. I looked at the computer screen. Time remaining, 2 minutes. Suddenly, I heard a sound. Sao Ting Hao, Ling. 2 hashes greater than thump. It came from upstairs. A heavy footstep. My heart slammed against my rib cage. Thump, thump. Someone was walking. The footsteps were moving toward the stairs. I looked at the progress bar. 95%. Come on, I whispered. Come on. The footsteps hit the landing. The 3rd step creaked. It was Ethan. He was coming down. Maybe for water. Maybe because he heard something. I could not unplug the drive yet. If I pulled it now, the data would be corrupted. I needed 30 more seconds. I reached out and turned off the monitor, plunging the room into darkness. The only light came from the tiny LED on the hard drive, blinking frantically. I slid under the desk. I curled myself into the tight space where Ethan put his feet, pressing my back against the cold metal of the computer tower. The doorknob turned. The door creaked open. I held my breath. I pinched my nose to stop the sound of my breathing. The hallway light spilled into the room, cutting a yellow wedge across the carpet. I saw Ethan's bare feet. He walked into the room. He stood there for a moment, scratching his stomach. I watched his feet. He took a step toward the desk. My heart was beating so loud I was sure he could hear it. It sounded like a drum in the silence. He stopped. He burped loudly. Then, he turned around and walked out. I heard his footsteps retreat to the kitchen. I heard the refrigerator door open, the sound of a bottle cap popping. He was getting a beer. I scrambled out from under the desk. I turned the monitor back on for a split second. Transfer complete. I ripped the hard drive out of the universal serial bus port. I shoved it into my bra, against my skin. It was warm. I shut down the computer. I wiped the keyboard with the sleeve of my shirt to remove my fingerprints. I adjusted the chair back to the exact height he kept it at. I slipped out of the office, just as I heard Ethan walking back from the kitchen. I ducked into the downstairs powder room and closed the door. leaving it cracked just a millimeter. Ethan walked past. He went back upstairs. The third step creaked again. I waited until I heard the bedroom door close and lock. I slumped against the sink, my legs giving out. I stared at myself in the mirror. My reflection was barely visible in the dark, just a shadow with eyes. I touched the hard drive hidden against my chest. Saoyutsing Haling. 2. I had him. I had the tax fraud. I had the embezzlement. I had the confession. I had the conspiracy to commit involuntary institutionalization. I had enough evidence to put him away for 20 years, but I was not going to turn him in yet. Not tonight. He wanted a show. He wanted to humiliate me in front of his family and take my money. I would let him try. I crept back upstairs, silent as the grave. I went into the nursery and checked on Leo. He was sleeping peacefully, unaware that his mother had just secured his future. I lay down on the rug again, the hard drive pressing uncomfortably into my skin. It was the most comforting pain I had ever felt. Tomorrow was the deadline. Tomorrow, the inheritance money would be released. Tomorrow, he would demand I sign the final transfer papers. Ethan thought tomorrow was his coronation. He thought he was going to be the king who conquered the weak, hysterical queen. He did not know that the queen had just bought the guillotine. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in 30 days, I slept without nightmares. My dreams were filled with the sound of sirens and the beautiful, metallic click of handcuffs. The confrontation had happened. He just did not know it yet. The morning sun filtered through the sheer curtains of the living room, casting long, pale beams across the hardwood floor. It was 10 o'clock on a Tuesday. To the rest of the world, it was just another work day. To the people in this room, it was the execution date of my freedom. Ethan sat on his leather sofa, his legs crossed, looking every inch the successful patriarch. He wore a crisp white dress shirt and navy trousers. Next to him sat Linda, my mother-in-law, clutching her handbag as if she were waiting for a bus. Across from them sat a man I did not know, a lawyer named Mr. Sterling, who had a briefcase open on the coffee table. They were waiting for me. I walked down the stairs slowly. I was dressed not in sweatpants, but in a tailored black suit I had not worn since my days at the design firm. I wore lipstick. I had brushed my hair until it shone. When I entered the room, the conversation stopped. Ethan looked me up and down, his eyebrows knitting together in confusion. He expected a victim. He expected a woman with swollen eyes and trembling hands. "You dressed up?" Ethan noted, a hint of mockery in his voice. "That is nice, Freya. It is good to see you making an effort for this occasion." I walked past him and stood by the television. "I thought I should look professional," I said calmly, "since we are discussing business." Mr. Sterling cleared his throat. He tapped a stack of documents on the table. "Mrs. Bennett, these are the papers we discussed. The transfer of assets and the custodial agreement. Your husband tells me you have agreed to sign voluntarily to avoid a Saoyutsing Haling. 2 is greater than public legal battle." I looked at the papers. They were the death warrant for my life as a free woman. Linda leaned forward. "Just sign them. Freya, do not make a scene. We are doing this for your own good. You need help, and Ethan needs to protect the family resources while you get it." I smiled at her. It was a razor-sharp smile. "Resources?" I repeated. "You mean the inheritance from my grandmother? The $500,000 that is scheduled to hit my account at noon today?" Ethan checked his watch. "Exactly," he said, "and we need this signed before the bank closes." "Come on, Kreia, Stop stalling. I reached into my pocket, but instead of a pen, I pulled out a small remote control. Actually, I said, my voice steady and cold, before we sign anything, I have a few things I would like to review. Ethan, you always told me transparency is key in a marriage, right? Ethan frowned. What are you doing? I pointed the remote at the smart television mounted on the wall behind me. I prepared a presentation. I said. I pressed the button. The screen flickered to life. The image was grainy at first, but the audio was crystal clear. It was the recording from last night. The camera angle was low, shooting up from the mantelpiece, capturing Ethan and Mia on the sofa. The room went deadly silent. On the screen, Ethan was laughing. He held a wine glass in one hand and Mia's hand in the other. Voice of Ethan on television. She is a 0. Mia. She stopped being interesting the moment she got pregnant. Now she is just an obstacle. An obstacle I have almost cleared. Mr. Sterling shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Linda gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Ethan stood up, his face turning a violent shade of red. Turn that off, he shouted. He lunged toward me. Freya, turn that off right now. I did not flinch. I pressed another button. The video cut to a spreadsheet. It was the document I had stolen from his computer in the middle of the night. The rows and columns were magnified on the 60-inch screen. Client funds, embezzlement. The header read, "And look here," I said, pointing to the screen like a weather reporter. This shows $50,000 of client money transferred to an illegal sports betting site. And here is $75,000 moved to a shell company in the Cayman Islands to hide it from the Internal Revenue Service. Ethan froze halfway across the room. He stared at the screen, his eyes bulging. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the sheer, primal terror of a man watching his life disintegrate. Where did you get that? He whispered. That is Saoyuting howling. 2# is greater than that is private. It is evident. Ethan, I corrected him. Mr. Sterling stood up abruptly. He closed his briefcase. Mr. Bennett, he said, his voice icy. Is this accurate? Are you using client funds for personal gambling? Ethan spun around, stammering. No. She faked it. She is a graphic designer. Remember? She is crazy. She photoshopped it. I pressed play again. The audio filled the room. Voice of Ethan on television. Once the money is in the joint account, I transfer it to the offshore shell to cover the crypto losses. Then, we put Freya in the state facility. Saoyuting howling. 2# is greater than they will keep her sedated. By the time she gets out, Saoyuting howling. 2# is greater than the money will be gone. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bones. Linda looked from the television to her son. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Not for me, but for the scandal. I turned off the television. The black screen reflected the room. A lawyer backing away, a mother looking faint, and a husband looking like a cornered rat. I took a step toward Ethan. You wanted me to sign papers? I asked softly. I picked up the heavy legal file from the coffee table. I weighed it in my hands. I did sign some papers this morning, Ethan, but not these. I tossed the file onto the floor. It landed with a satisfying slap at his feet. I signed a sworn affidavit for the Internal Revenue Service. I sent them the full transaction history of your embezzlement scheme at 9 o'clock this morning. Ethan's knees seemed to give out. He sank back onto the sofa. You, Saoyuting howling. 2# is greater than you, called the Internal Revenue Service. He choked out, And your boss, I continued, ticking off the list on my fingers. Mr. Henderson, I emailed him the audio recording of you discussing how you steal from his clients. I imagine security is cleaning out your desk right now. Ethan put his head in his hands. And finally, I said, looking at Linda, I sent the video of your little plan to commit me to a state facility, to Child Protective Services, and the family court, along with the footage of you neglecting Leo to play video games. My inner voice was singing. It was a choir of vengeance. I watched the color drain from his face, and it was more beautiful than any sunset. You ruined me, he whispered. You crazy bitch. You ruined everything. I laughed. It was a genuine, happy laugh. I did not ruin you. Ethan, I just turned on the lights. You are the one who made the mess. Mr. Sterling was already at the door. I am recusing myself from this matter, he announced. Mr. Bennett, I suggest you find criminal defense counsel immediately. Do not contact my firm again. The front door slammed shut. Linda began to wail. My son, my poor son. How could you do this to him? He is the father of your child. He is a criminal. Linda, I snapped. And if you knew about the money laundering, you are an accessory. I would save your tears for the grand jury. I walked over to the side table where my purse was waiting. I picked it up. I am leaving now. I am taking Leo. We are going to a hotel. Ethan looked up. His eyes were wet, red-rimmed, and filled with hate. You cannot take him. The house is mine. The house is in foreclosure. Ethan, I said, I saw the bank notices you hid in the shredder. You have not paid the mortgage in 4 months. I walked to the front door. I opened it and let the fresh air rush in. It smelled of autumn leaves and freedom. I paused and looked back at him one last time. He looked small. He looked pathetic on his $3,000 sofa. By the way, I said, I canceled the cable. Since you are going to prison, I figured you would not need the sports package anymore. I walked out the door and down the path to where my car was waiting. I did not look back. I could hear Linda screaming my name from the porch, but her voice sounded distant, like a radio playing in another room. I got into the car. Leo was in the back seat, playing with a toy bear. He looked up and smiled. Mama? He said. Yes, baby, I said, starting the engine. Mama is here. I put the car in drive. It was over. The suffocating weight was gone. I drove out of the subdivision, past the manicured lawns and the perfect facades. I was homeless. I was a single mother. I was terrified, but for the first time in years, I was awake. The adrenaline that had fueled me for 30 days did not taper off slowly. It crashed. It left my body all at once, leaving behind a hollow, aching exhaustion that settled deep in my bones. It has been 14 days since I walked out of that house. 14 days since I dropped the match and watched my old life burn to the ground. Leo and I are staying in a short-term rental apartment 2 towns over. It is small. The carpet is a generic shade of beige, and the furniture is mismatched, but it is clean. Most importantly, it is quiet. There is no leather sofa. There are no video games blaring at 3 in the morning. There is only the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of Leo playing with his blocks on the floor. You would think victory would taste sweet. You would think that seeing the man who tormented you face justice would feel like a celebration. It does not. It feels like waking up after a car accident to find that you survived. But you are bruised, bleeding, and alone on the side of the road. I sat at the small kitchen table, staring at the newspaper I had bought this morning. I did not need to search for the article. It was on page 3 of the local section. Local financial advisor charged with fraud and embezzlement. The photo was grainy, taken as he was being led out of his office building in handcuffs. Ethan looked disheveled. His tie was crooked. His hair, usually gelled to perfection, was hanging in his face. He looked small. He looked like exactly what he was, a thief who got caught. I read the details. The investigation by the Internal Revenue Service and the local police had moved with terrifying speed once I provided the evidence. They froze everything: the bank accounts, the investment portfolios, the hidden crypto wallets. The house was gone. The bank had initiated foreclosure proceedings 3 days after his arrest. The locks were changed. The lawn I used to mow was likely already overgrown. Zou je jing haling? Dois cardinal MIR ken Mia? I let out a dry, humorless laugh. According to a mutual friend, Mia resigned from her job via email the morning the news broke. She blocked Ethan's number. She deleted her social media profiles. She vanished the moment she realized the golden goose was actually a cooked turkey. She ran. She did not love him. She loved the boat he promised her. She loved the idea of a European vacation funded by my grandmother's money. Ethan was sitting in a holding cell, likely unable to make bail. Realizing that the woman he destroyed his family for was nothing but a reflection of his own greed, I folded the newspaper and pushed it away. I should be happy. I should be dancing around this small kitchen. I won. I protected my son. I secured my inheritance. But as I looked at the gray sky, I felt a wave of grief so profound it almost doubled me over. I was grieving for the man I thought I married. I was grieving for the years I spent trying to be good enough for someone who was incapable of love. I thought about the dinners I cooked that went cold. I thought about the nights I spent crying in the bathroom, wondering why I was so unlovable, why I was so crazy. He stole more than just money from me. He stole my 20s. He stole my trust. He stole my ability to look at a kind gesture without wondering what the hidden cost was. That is the true crime of the narcissist. They do not just break your heart, they break your reality. Leo walked over to me and tugged on my pant leg. He held up a red plastic block. "Mama, build?" he asked. I looked down at him. His eyes were bright and clear. He had not asked for his father once. Children are resilient. Yes, but they are also intuitive. He knew the tension was gone. He slept through the night now. I picked him up and set him on my lap. I buried my face in his soft hair, inhaling the scent of baby shampoo. "Yes, baby," I whispered. "We will build. I am free, but I am scarred." I walk down the street and flinch when I hear a voice that sounds like his. I check my bank account 5 times a day just to make sure the money is still there. I sleep with a chair wedged under the doorknob because I cannot shake the feeling that he will find a way to get in. The lawyers tell me the divorce will be messy, but straightforward. With him in prison and the evidence of abuse, I will get full custody. It is a slam dunk, but legal victories do not heal the soul. I looked around the empty apartment. It was not a home yet. It was just a shelter. I realized then that the war was over, but the reconstruction would take a lifetime. I had to rebuild myself from the ground up, just like this tower of blocks Leo was stacking. I reached out and placed a blue block on top of his red one. The tower wobbled, but it stood. I took a deep breath. The air in the apartment was stale, but it was mine. No one was telling me to clean. No one was timing my showers. No one was calling me crazy. I was lonely. I was tired. I was sad. But for the first time in 5 years, I was real. It has been exactly 6 months since the day I walked out of the house in the suburbs. The seasons have changed. The leaves that were turning brown when I left are now gone, replaced by the fresh, hopeful buds of spring. I stood on the balcony of my new apartment. It is not a mansion. It does not have Italian leather sofas or a manicured lawn governed by a homeowners association. It is a modest 2-bedroom unit in the city, but it has something the old house never had. It has light. Yesterday, my lawyer called me with the news. The trial was short. The evidence I provided, the tax records, the recordings, the videos, was insurmountable. Ethan pleaded guilty to 3 counts of wire fraud and 1 count of embezzlement. He was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Linda tried to sue me for defamation, but her case was thrown out before it even reached a judge. She lost her home, paying for Ethan's legal fees. I heard she is living in a small motel off the highway, telling anyone who will listen that her daughter-in-law is a witch who hexed her perfect son. I took a sip of my tea and looked at the document sitting on the patio table. It was the final disbursement of my grandmother's estate. $500,000. Ethan wanted this money to buy a boat. He wanted to use it to sail away from his crimes. I have a different plan. Next week, I am cutting the ribbon on a small office downtown. It will be the headquarters of the Rose Initiative. It is a non-profit organization dedicated to providing legal and financial aid to women trapped in economically abusive marriages. We will help them hide money. We will help them hire lawyers. We will help them understand that financial control is just domestic violence with a calculator. But as I looked at the check, I felt a heavy knot in my stomach. It was not guilt. Exactly. It was accountability. I walked back inside and looked at myself in the hallway mirror. I cannot blame Ethan for everything. That is the comfortable lie. The easy story where I am the perfect victim and he is the cartoon villain. But real life is not a cartoon. The truth is, I let him in. I ignored the red flags in the beginning because I wanted to be loved. When he made subtle comments about my spending 5 years ago, I laughed it off. When he told me to quit my job because he could take care of us, I agreed because it felt safe. I traded my independence for security, and in doing so, I handed him the weapon he used to bludgeon me. I was not just a victim. I was a volunteer in my own diminishing. I signed the prenup. I stayed silent when I should have screamed. I fed the monster because I was afraid of the dark. I leaned forward, resting my forehead against the cool glass of the mirror. Never again. I whispered, I am not perfect. I am still healing. I still have days where I feel small and afraid. But I own my story now. I own my mistakes. And I own my victory. Leo ran into the room, holding a toy car. Mama, a park? He asked, tugging on my hand. I smiled. The darkness of the last year felt like a distant memory, a storm that had finally passed. Yes, Leo, I said, let us go to the park. I grabbed my keys and the check. I would deposit it on the way. I walked out the door and locked it behind me. I did not look back at the apartment. I did not look back at the past. Ethan Bennett has 15 years to think about the wife he called a zero. I have the rest of my life to prove that I am infinite. The engine started with a smooth hum. I pulled out into the traffic, merging with the flow of the city. I checked the rearview mirror once, just to make sure the lane was clear, and then I kept my eyes on the road ahead. The windshield is bigger than the rearview mirror for a reason. It is because where you are going is much more important than where you have been.